Well, I came to the U.S. when I was just 5 years old after my father passed away, and my mother took the brave decision to bring us to the U.S. As someone who was widowed, without money, and alone. She tried to go into the process to get a visa. Of course, she didn't have all those resources, but for her, the most important thing was trying to give us a better life. And she crossed into the U.S.-Mexico border approximately maybe like almost 29 years ago. And I can actually remember the last day that we were in Mexico where my mom went to pick me up and from school. Instead of going home, we went to pick up my other siblings. That my younger brother was about 3 years old. My other two older siblings, two older sisters, were about probably like 8 and 10 years old. And instead of going home, we went to the Catedral de Puebla, where my mom took a picture and went to pray for our safe passage. And just like a quick and fast flash, I remember us being at the U.S.-Mexico border in the late hours of the night, where we were there, myself with a coyote, the person that helps immigrants cross, and all of a sudden, all of us just running, and my mom falling face down. But throughout the whole time, my mom was there to protect me, and she held my hand tightly, reminded me that no matter what happened, she was there to protect me. And because of that love, because of that sacrifice, I was able to be in the U.S., where I was able to grow up in the U.S. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, where the community that I was part of was predominantly Mexican and Russian immigrants. But because of that sacrifice, I was able to graduate high school, graduate college, graduate law school, and eventually on February 3rd of 2016 to become the first undocumented attorney to be admitted in the great state of New York. Really showing that despite the obstacles, that the American dream is still alive. The American dream is the realization of our parents' American dream, that my mom risked everything with the hopes of one day, the hard dream that one of her children will become an attorney. And that's exactly, for me, that's what inspires me to do this work. That as an advocate, I'm advocating for my community. As an attorney, defending my community. And ultimately, as an American, to really uphold the values of what this great nation is, which is a nation of immigrants and a nation of just laws that could be modern. And that's why I'm advocating for a modern immigration system that can live up to our ideals. Well, one of the reasons that I became a lawyer was because something that my mom has taught me since I was young. She always used to tell us, en la familia tenemos que tener un abogado y un doctor. In our family, we always need to have a doctor and a lawyer. A doctor to take care of the health of the family, and a lawyer to defend the family. And I really took that to heart because, for me, seeing in my community where there were attorneys who didn't understand the community, who didn't know how to help them, and at worst, when you had notarios or people who were not attorneys, ripping off immigrant communities, telling them, hey, I'll give you citizenship if you give me $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, and doing nothing for their case. So for me, I felt that was the need of why I need to become an attorney, to be an advocate, to be there, a fighter for my immigrant community. And there was one powerful tool, which is the law, and the law I could use to really protect our immigrant community, to ensure that their rights were being respected. And ultimately, as a lawyer, that is the skill that I do now, where whether it's speaking at a lecture in Ohio State University, or being in Congress speaking with our members of Congress, including Ohio State U.S. senators like Sherrod Brown and Senator Portman. It's those things, as well as being in the courtroom where I'm representing children facing deportation and I'm able to help them get some type of relief. So for me, that's exactly what being an attorney means, and why I became an attorney, to be an advocate and attorney to protect the rights of our community. Yeah, well, DACA, one of the things the most important thing that I tell people when they talk about DACA and how DACA came about is that DACA was really the product of a commitment of young students who had no money for big lobbyists. It was just simply college students, it was high school students, it was administrators, it was educators, professors, who really came together and started pushing the administration to show that, hey, look, we have this amazing young people who are going to school, contributing to the country they call home, and aspiring to become engineers, doctors, lawyers. And for me, that's the most important thing, that despite the politics, it was young people who came to the realization that DACA needed to be created. And of course, that came with a fierce policy debate and fierce political battle, where we had to push the administration, the Obama administration, in 2011, 2012, to take action, something that was unheard of, but it had legal precedent. And for me, as a lawyer, back then I was a law student, we were actually pushing the administration to take action and reminding them that they had legal authority to take that. I went to meetings with high-level senior White House officials, where I confronted them saying, how come the president not taking action when the president has taken action in 2009 for U.S. citizen children and spouses of deceased veterans and military members, where Republicans and Democratic presidents had taken similar action. So for me, that's exactly the policy battle that came about in the creation of DACA, where young people came together to push an entire nation and get allies like businesses, like celebrities, state universities, legal experts, to remind the president that he did have the authority to take action on DACA, and that he did have the power to expand DACA to not just dreamers, but to also parents. Of course, we are seeing in this political climate where the Trump administration has terminated DACA, but it doesn't take away the fact that young people, students, college students, organize themselves and push for a program that was successful, a program that has contributed to the economy more than $460 billion. So I think that's what exactly the creation of DACA, and my role as a law student, but as well as a legal advocate, to remind the country that the president had the legal authority to take action on DACA. Well, right now, the short answer of where we are on immigration is that we don't know. That's a reality. There is countless proposals out there being introduced by both Republicans and Democrats, as well as bipartisan proposals that shows that we have a momentum for Congress to do something. We have a proposal like the Bridge Act that would just provide just renewable work permits to dreamers, or we have the DREAM Act, where we have a path to citizenship for dreamers as well. And of course, there's plenty of proposals. Just this week, we had Republican Senator John McCain and Senator Coons from Connecticut, who introduced a proposal to provide pathway to citizenship, as well as some funding for border security. We don't know where that's going to go, but there's also conversations of simply Congress is not going to get a solution by February 8th, which is where the government needs to be refunded. So what they're probably thinking is they are going to extend DACA for one more year and allow people to qualify and allow people to reapply again. But the short answer is that there is a course of proposals out there. There is political discussions out there between Republicans and Democrats. But also we have a president who is listening to some of the staunchest immigration hardliners like Stephen Miller and Senator Jeff Sessions, who have really made a whole career of targeting not just undocumented immigrants, but also legal immigrants. And they're trying to cut the ability of U.S. citizens to bring in their loved ones, like their parents, like my client who is whose two children are in the Marines and in the Army. And what this administration is trying to do is prevent these service members from petitioning their mom to be a U.S. citizen and to have a reunited family. So I think that's exactly where we are at, where we have both sides playing political games with the lives of dreamers at the expense of what this nation can be. Yeah, it's the tragedy of our immigration system, where we have American citizens who are trying to bring in and unite their families. Like one of my clients who has two children who are in the Marines and in the Army, and their children tell me that they're more afraid of our government ripping apart their family than the enemy abroad. That they're more afraid that they're not going to see their family as a result of their own commander-in-chief than the enemy abroad. And I think that's exactly how nonsensical and absurd our immigration system, that even our veterans and service members cannot have their families together, or worse, fear that their families are going to be ripped apart. Well, what Ohio State University can do, administrators and students can do, I would say three important things. One is obviously contact your member of Congress, your U.S. Senator, to let them know that you support the DREAM Act, you support Pathway to Citizenship for undocumented students. That's very powerful. You have no idea how much these members of Congress realize when a constituent talks to them, they speak their voice, and that's very powerful. Two, what I would say is that as administrators, push the administration to provide much needed resources for undocumented students. These are students, myself, when didn't have access to state financially, didn't have access to any type of scholarships because of my immigration status. And I can tell you that just having that type of resource for scholarships and for state aid from the university to continue their college education is incredible. So that's something that they can definitely do. And most important, three, is at the end of the day, all politics is local. There's a lot of confusion and misconception of what immigration system is, and it's very easy to get stuck into the talking points. So the most important thing is just to simply go into your communities, talk to the people that your neighbor. When was the last time that someone knocked on their neighbor's door and say, "Hey, listen, my name is ABC, and I'm your neighbor." Those are the most important things that we need to do. I've seen this work where people from the deep south, where people have been Republican, and I speak to them, to my own neighbors, and I speak to them, and they say, "You know what, I didn't understand this issue, and you know what, I support immigration reform because I don't support, of course I support border security, but I also support my neighbors being U.S. citizens. I support my spouse being a U.S. citizen. I support my friends, my colleagues, my workers." So those intimate conversations with your neighbors is very significant, because we can listen to different type of viewpoints, but when we come as neighbors, something incredible happens when we can come together and find common ground. Well, that's the thing, that I was able to, get to become a lawyer, not by my own doing, but because so many people supported me, and that's exactly the importance of the Ohio State University community, to come together as Buckeyes, right, where they can support each other. And for me, that's exactly what happened in New York, where my college advisor, pushed me to say, "Cesar, you can go to college," intervene when I almost got expelled because I didn't have a Social Security, to law school, where the dean of my law school said, "Cesar, you know what? We believe that you can be a great lawyer, so we're going to be able to get and secure private scholarships so you can continue your legal education." And ultimately, I met and worked with amazing attorneys. The Attorney General of New York State, our City Council president came in support of my application to be admitted. My local district attorney at law enforcement agency came out in support of my admission, because they believe that my success was the community's success. And that's exactly where we're at, that despite having this less opportunities, is coming together. And that is what's going to continue the success of many people here in Columbus, Ohio, or in places different across the country, where our communities to come together to allow for young people to just aspire for their dream. And this is not just for undocumented students, but for all students. This is about all students to have the opportunity to explore the universe of knowledge. This is about having every student have the ability to go to school and live up to their own American dream without having to worry about, well, where am I going to pay my college tuition? So, for me, this is exactly an educational issue. This is not just about immigration. This is about education for everyone, to support young people to be able to go to college, graduate, and really aspire for their dream in their profession, and have a wonderful family. That's ultimately what we're all about, and what this nation is about. Well, for me, working in the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign was incredibly important, because it really showed where we are at this nation and what this nation can be. There I was, without having citizenship, without having a legal document to say that I'm here permanently, I still have a voice in this country. And I think this is where, for me as a lawyer, I embrace our constitutional rights, because I had my First Amendment right to be participating in the political process to make this country a better place for everyone. And that's exactly what the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign gave me the opportunity to work with a U.S. Senator, where I was advising him on his immigration policy, working and outreaching the Latino community and speaking to hear and listen to the concerns. of a group of immigrants that are part of like any other group. So for me, it was really important to see and work with the U.S. Senator, and both professionally because I was drafting policy, traveling to almost 43 states around the country, and dealing with amazing places where people are really just want something better for their families. And I think ultimately that is exactly what the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign was all about, to really have an opportunity for everyday Americans to have a voice. And for me, being part of that, having no documentation, having no citizenship, to be still part of the political process, that we were able to influence national and international policy. And I think that's really what this great country is all about. You know, the urgency to get a deal in Congress is incredibly important. Each day, 122 Dreamers are losing their DACA protection. That means that they're losing their ability to work, pay taxes. They're losing the ability to be employed. They're losing probably the ability to pay their mortgage because they have bought a house. So the urgency is real, and the lack of action in Congress is having real consequences in the lives of young people. And as we are seeing, the reality is that when we talk about Dreamers, we're also talking about the families of Dreamers. We're talking about the original Dreamers. We're talking about the parents as well, because it's one thing to do something for Dreamers, but it's also to do something for all our immigrant communities, that they're all contributing to the country they call home. So I think the urgency is now. The urgency for Congress to pass the DREAM Act is now. Well, right now we're seeing the potential of another government shutdown take place. The last government shutdown that lasted for 3 days pretty much was conditioned on an open government if Congress could solve the issue of immigration and to protect Dreamers by February 8th. We're obviously seeing that there's still no major solution. There's various proposals out there by Republicans and Democrats, and various bipartisan proposals, but there's no set bill that both parties are coming together to really advocate from. So frankly, we're seeing that a solution is not within reach. Even today, just within this week, they said that they're probably just going to extend DACA for another year and let people reapply. But the uncertainty is very real. Senator Mitch McConnell pretty much said that let's see which proposal wins 60 votes, showing that there is no unified strategy. There is no common approach that both parties are coming together. And, which is sad, because each day Dreamers are losing the protection. The urgency is now for Congress to act, and that's something that we're seeing now, that Congress has a challenge to pass immigration reform, let alone keep their government open. And it's no surprise why only 60% of the American people approve of the work that Congress is doing. So I think we have a lot of work to do, so hopefully we can kind of get that done. Yeah, well, we have right now a president who obviously doesn't understand the various issues of policy, and it's okay. Policy is complex, but we also do need a president that's going to corral both parties and say, this is what we need to get done. Let's get in the table. Let's come up with solutions. Let's iron out the details, and let's come up with a bipartisan proposal that can work and can resolve the issue once and for all. We don't have that from this administration. We just have a White House that's being run by his advisors rather than the president. We have a White House that's being run by immigration hardliners rather than a president who understands the value of reforming our immigration system and having a modern immigration platform where we can compete economically around the world. And that's something that his advisors are not really working on. So the president needs to step up. The president needs to come and bring both parties together and let them come up with a solution and actually get something done. We're not seeing that, but again, there's always opportunity. I'm a firm believer of giving people the opportunity to step up, and hopefully this administration, hopefully this president can really lead and pass immigration reform, something that has evaded past presidents like President Obama, who couldn't pass immigration reform over the past 8 years in office. So this president has the opportunity to make a great deal for the American people, for protecting Dreamers, as well as to create a system that's going to be modern, so we can compete globally around the world. Well, right now we're seeing that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, which is the agency responsible for pretty much detaining and deporting immigrants, we have seen the lack of accountability, and we're also seeing new policies where immigration and ICE agents can literally target any group of immigrants, not just people who threaten us harm, not just terrorists. They can literally go into a home, arrest someone, and if the grandmother or a student is there, they can also be detained and deported. So this is the climate that we're functioning on. And this is where also the opportunity for states to respond, and localities like Columbus, like New York City, like Chicago, and many small towns can really respond to counteract that aggressive enforcement. So for example, local cities can prevent immigration agents from being close to schools, from being in courthouses. So people can actually go to school. Students don't have to worry about being detained and deported. So people can go pay a ticket and actually have the due process heard. So, these are the things that cities can also do, and as well as for cities to provide legal services for people to, have some type of legal defense, and including having legal attorneys to let them know if they have any type of immigration relief that they can apply for. So, these are the things that states can do, and whether it's simply creating a fund to help people learn English and become U.S. citizens, to as bold as what California is doing, like the California Values Act, where it's preventing local state agencies from working with Immigration Customs Enforcement. It's preventing employers from sharing the information of their workers, because workers have rights to keep their private information. So these are the things that states and localities can do, and ultimately, as Justice Brandeis say of the Supreme Court, states are the laboratory of democracy, and I think states can create incredible initiatives that can protect immigrant communities and allow them to contribute to the country they call home in taxpayer revenue, that can help build roads, that can help build our infrastructure that helps everyone, not just one group of people. Yeah, so in addition to the various congressional proposals out there by members of Congress in both Republicans and Democrats, we're also seeing the White House rolling out their framework of what they hope to see. And of course, these are proposals drafted by Stephen Miller, the president's immigration advisor, that pretty much comes with four pillars. One is $25 billion for border security, including the border wall. Two, the elimination of the diversity lottery system, which essentially allows people from low immigration countries like Africa or South Asia or Eastern Europe to pretty much apply and get a visa and come to the U.S. for a green card, as well as one citizenship for 1.8 million dreamers, which frankly is pretty generous. But also along with that is the last pillar, which is the termination of the right of U.S. citizens to bring in their mother, or their parent. The president pretty much is trying to pass the DREAM Act, but is also trying to pass a very anti-immigrant wish list, the termination of the rights of U.S. citizens on the back of the DREAM Act. And I think those four pillars are pillars that even Republicans and Democrats have called non-starters, that they are too extreme, and they don't help the national security. Whereas, we need funding for our border security, but we can use $25 billion to do way better things than a wall, like supporting our veterans, like building our new bridges and roads. Those are things that we can do. So this is what the administration has presented, that has faced extreme backlash from both political parties, because they do say that we can protect dreamers, but not at the cost of terminating the rights of U.S. citizens or spending money they could be going to somewhere else. Well, one thing I would say to dreamers is that you're not alone. You have an amazing community out here who are willing to have your back, and it starts simply with sharing your stories. Your stories are very powerful. It's not a liability, it's nothing to be ashamed of. And for me, if it wasn't for me telling my story, I would not have been in as a lawyer. I would not be here at this moment. So And, you know, this is not about telling your story in front of Washington, D.C., in front of Congress, but it's also telling the story to the person you trust, whether it's your partner, your friend, your teacher, the administrator, college advisor, the president of the university or program. You know, there's people out there, really good people who will help you, who will support you, and reminding yourself that your story is very powerful. For me, I tell very proudly my story as a new American, as an American that aspires to the American dream just like anyone else. And for me, I am 100% Mexican, but I'm also 100% American. And that's a very special thing here in this nation. And that starts with the power of telling your story. So telling your story is going to be open doors and opportunities for others, that we all have that story, whether you're undocumented, an immigrant, or a U.S. citizen who is trying to go to school and just simply live the American dream. And we all have that powerful story.